CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to The World Today, live from CGTN in London. I'm Polly Middlehurst. Our top stories today. Israel warns Iran's hardline new leader could jeopardize a nuclear deal, but Tehran insists it's closer than ever to an agreement. Also today, Armenia holds snap parliamentary elections amid tensions over last year's Nagorno-Karabakh defeat. And as we mark World Refugee Day, the UN says an unprecedented number of people have been forced to flee their homes. Israel has strongly condemned the result of Iran's presidential election. It's warned that the victory of the hardline conservative cleric Ebrahim Raisi could jeopardize any new nuclear deal between Tehran and the West. Well, Israel's new Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, has called the result of Saturday's poll the last chance for world powers to wake up before returning to the nuclear agreement. But Tehran disagrees. It says it's closer than ever to a deal. Negotiators for Iran and 6 world powers have adjourned talks to discuss remaining differences with their capitals. Well, I'm joined now from the newsroom by CGTN's Louise Greenwood with more. Louise, Israel unequivocal then in its response to that election result in Iran?
Yes, we've seen regional leaders like Syria's President Assad and Turkey's President Erdogan quick off the mark to offer their congratulations to Iran's new president. But an unsurprising reaction from Israel's newly elected Prime Minister. Naftali Bennett is a right-wing nationalist, and of course he's heading up a broad coalition government that's split on many issues, but a large proportion of which remains completely opposed to nuclear talks between the West and Iran. Their argument being that any appeasement of Tehran over the nuclear issue will only have the effect of emboldening the Islamic conservatives typified by Ebrahim Raisi in their dealings with Hamas, the militant group based in Gaza. Bennett was speaking after a meeting of the new Israeli cabinet, and this is what he had to say about the role of the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the role that he played in this election.
Of all the people that Khamenei could have chosen, he chose the hangman of Tehran, the man infamous among Iranians and across the world for leading the death committees, which executed thousands of innocent Iranian citizens throughout the years. Raisi's selection is, I would say, the last chance for the world powers to wake up before returning to the nuclear agreement and to understand who they're doing business with.
Let's pick up on those allegations about Iran's new president, Louise. What is known about him and his past?
Well, Ebrahim Raisi is a controversial figure. He's been involved in Iranian politics really from the time of the 1979 revolution when he was a youngster. But he really came to prominence in the 80s when he was one of 4 top judges who sat on a series of secret tribunals. Now, the allegation is that this group ordered the executions of thousands of prisoners from left-wing opposition groups, as well as orchestrating a harsh crackdown on women's rights and on Iran's LGBTQ citizens. Raisi now seems to be hinting at a change in direction. He fought the presidential campaign on the promise of ending corruption in Iran and reinvigorating the troubled economy. But to many analysts, this victory represents not much more than a consolidation of the power of the clerical Shia forces that still run the country.
So where does that leave the stalled 2015 nuclear deal?
Well, experts seem divided on this point. Some do argue that Raisi's presidential win is the best hope for US President Joe Biden. Why? Because with the economy in its current state, Tehran is keener than ever to get Iranian oil back onto world markets, particularly now that prices are stabilizing. Biden has hinted that he wants the US to re-enter the agreement in which sanctions will be lifted in return for a cap on Iran's controversial nuclear program. For Tehran, a new deal also offers a big payback. It's the chance for conservatives to argue that Iran needs a hardline government to stand up to Washington and the EU, while also offering them the chance to take the credit for any economic upswing that might follow. And Raisi now, Polly, is being openly talked of as a successor to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who's 82.
Louise, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. Well, staying with this, journalist and political analyst Negar Mortazavi says efforts to get Washington to return to the nuclear Iran deal will continue despite Raisi's election.
The nuclear deal is already on the paper. It's already been made, and this is sort of a return to an existing deal. And it's likely that this return will actually be finalized when the current administration of Hassan Rouhani is still in power, because the actual change of administration happens in the month of August. So if this gets finalized, I think the deal has a chance of surviving because the decision in Tehran has been also blessed by the Supreme Leader. But anything beyond this nuclear deal, beyond the JCPOA, be it about Iran's nuclear programs, other aspects, or any issue beyond the nuclear deal is going to be much more harder and more complicated.
Negar Mortazavi there. Now, Armenians have been voting in snap parliamentary elections with over 2.5 million people eligible to cast their ballot. The poll follows months of tensions over last year's military defeat against Azerbaijan over the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Well, CGTN's Michael Bar-David has this report.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan called for the snap election, forced to do so following months of protests demanding his resignation. The demonstrations were driven by what many Armenians feel was a humiliating defeat against Azerbaijan last year. Last November, Pashinyan signed a Moscow-brokered peace deal following 6 weeks of fighting between ethnic Armenian and Azerbaijani forces over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. According to the agreement, Armenia ceded territory in and around Nagorno-Karabakh. The deal is considered a major victory for Azerbaijan. Pashinyan accepts that the deal was devastating, but has insisted it was necessary to prevent further losses. About 6,500 people were killed during the 6 weeks of violence. The parliamentary frontrunners are Nikol Pashinyan's Civil Contract Party and the main opposition Armenia Alliance, headed by former President Robert Kocharyan. Pashinyan, a former journalist, came to power after leading a popular revolution in 2018. Kocharyan is an ex-president who served between 1998 and 2008. He's a native of Nagorno-Karabakh, but for some he represents corruption, as he's currently under an investigation for bribery. Opinion polls show the parties of Pashinyan and Kocharyan are neck and neck. If neither wins over 50% of the votes, a second round of voting will be held. I'm Michal Bar-David for CGTN in Antalya, Turkey.
Now, the new US Special Representative for the DPRK is in South Korea. Sung Kim will hold talks with counterparts from Seoul and Tokyo on how to restart denuclearization diplomacy with Pyongyang. Jack Barton has more now from Seoul.
The visit marks the first trip to South Korea by Sung Kim since being appointed by President Joe Biden. But he is an experienced veteran when it comes to DPRK nuclear diplomacy, having served in the same role under President Obama, as well as representing the United States in the six-party talks under Obama and former Republican President George W. Bush. On Monday, Kim is scheduled to meet with his South Korean counterpart before joining a trilateral meeting that will include Tokyo's nuclear envoy. The following day, Kim will meet with officials from the Unification Ministry, which oversees inter-Korean affairs. The talks have been arranged following the release of Joe Biden's new DPRK denuclearization policy that seeks practical solutions while avoiding the strategic patience of the Obama administration or the grand bargains sought by Donald Trump. The talks are also being held amid concerns dialogue efforts could be jeopardized if Seoul and Washington hold their annual summertime joint military exercises. Sung Kim's 5-day visit also comes just days after DPRK leader Kim Jong-un said his country should be ready for dialogue and confrontation with the United States. Despite the tough tone of the message, South Korean officials are viewing it as a positive signal that Pyongyang is now ready to resume diplomacy with Washington after months of stating that such talks were out of the question. There had been speculation that Kim would meet with officials from the DPRK inside the joint security area of the demilitarized zone which divides the Korean peninsula, though that has now been ruled out by officials here in South Korea. Jack Barton, CGTN, Seoul.
Let's take a look now at news from around the world. And the Chinese health authorities say the mainland has administered more than 1 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses. China sped up its vaccination process in March, aiming to protect the country from variants of the virus. Over 2.5 billion vaccine doses have been given worldwide, and Beijing says it will continue its vaccine cooperation with other countries too. Meanwhile, Brazil has marked another grim milestone in its battle against coronavirus. The country's death toll has now passed 500,000. Experts are warning the world's second deadliest outbreak may also worsen as winter arrives and new variants spread. Only 11% of Brazilians have been fully vaccinated so far, and the government refuses to back social distancing measures. A member of Uganda's Olympic team has become the first athlete arriving in Japan to test positive for COVID-19. He'd been placed in quarantine. The team were all fully vaccinated and had even tested positive before boarding. Critics have questioned the risks of holding the Olympics during the pandemic, but organisers insist the Games can be held safely. And one person has died and another has been injured after a pickup truck ran into a crowd of spectators at a pride parade in Florida in the United States. Police apprehended the truck driver at the festival near Fort Lauderdale. Florida's mayor said the crash was a deliberate attack on the LGBTQ community. Police are investigating and say the driver's intentions at this stage remain unclear. Still ahead here on The World Today, as China's taikonauts settle into the space station, we take a look at their daily routine life. We're back in a moment.
The EU's digital COVID certificate, which offers the promise of unlocking hassle-free travel around Europe this summer.
In less than 2 weeks' time, the Czech border will also open to all EU and Serbian citizens. 4.4 million Hungarians received their first dose of COVID vaccine.
18 and over can receive a COVID-19 vaccination, but it does come with conditions.
Third wave will probably take longer to emerge because of the high vaccination levels. The home of English rugby, Twickenham Football Stadium, is being turned into a mass vaccination centre.
Back to CGTN London, a reminder of our top stories. Israel warns Iran's hardline new leader could jeopardise a nuclear deal, but Tehran insists it's closer than ever to an agreement. And Armenia holds snap parliamentary elections amid tension over last year's Nagorno-Karabakh defeat. Now, the UK's Justice Secretary says the government's considering easing travel restrictions for people who've had 2 COVID vaccinations. And a major push to offer jabs to all adults in England is currently underway due to a surge of infections of the Delta variant. Well, Nicole Johnston is at a vaccination centre in Tottenham Hotspur's football ground. Hello to you, Nicole. The government then on a big drive to get young people vaccinated this weekend. How's it going?
It is, and it may not look like it behind me at the moment, but tens of thousands of people have been turning out at these mass vaccination centres at some of the UK's most famous football grounds. Most of them, of course, are under the age of 30, over the age of 18, because the UK on Friday opened up vaccinations for everyone aged over 18. So it goes to show how far the vaccination program here has really sort of driven forward over the last few months. The government is hoping that that younger age group will turn out for vaccinations. They believe that the increase in infections is being driven by younger people. So it's opened up these mass vaccination centres this weekend. They've been calling it Super Saturday, Super Sunday, trying to get people in here. At the same time, there's also been surge testing for COVID-19 in South London and Cumbria because of increasing infections of the Delta variant. One of the things about these vaccination centres, though, and the people lining up here, is that they don't need an appointment. They don't even need to be registered with their local doctor. It's simply a walk-in centre, and that's really allowing a lot more people to very easily come here and get vaccinated, as you'll see in this report.
Thousands of young people in London have been lining up for their first COVID-19 vaccine.
I'm actually excited, and this is my first dose today, and there was a lot of queue outside.
Mass vaccination centres have opened at football stadiums, including the London Olympic Stadium, which is now home to football club West Ham United.
Fantastic turnout. We've booked 10,000 today. That's brilliant, just at this stadium, and it's been a fantastic effort by all our organisations across the whole of North East London.
Meanwhile, the Delta variant, first identified in India, is surging across the country. England is now recording more than 10,000 new cases a day. There's been a 79% increase in cases over the last week, and the number of people in hospital has also doubled. Most of them were either unvaccinated or had only received one jab. As for international travel, there's still no clear sign the government will add more countries to its green list soon.
I think that we should be predominantly deciding to holiday at home this summer while we get all of our population vaccinated. But I think we are moving stepwise closer to being able to renew our lives and move around to other countries and to change the way that we manage to live with this virus.
Scientists say it's a race between the virus and the vaccine. And while that plays out, people wait and hope for an end to the pandemic.
And Nicole, you mentioned in your report there, still unclear whether or not the government's going to open up international travel for British people. But how is the travel industry responding to those current restrictions?
Well, the travel industry, of course, is outraged at the very confusing picture and the mixed messages that we're getting from the government. They're planning to hold a day of action on Wednesday, which could result in protests or strikes. But as you said, it's a very unclear situation about whether British people will be able to escape the pretty chilly weather here and get their usual Mediterranean summer holiday. As we heard in my report, Public Health England, the message seems to be that they think people should stay at home. They also said that further lockdowns in winter could be possible. We also heard today from the Justice Minister, Secretary Robert Buckland. He said that travel restrictions are a trade-off that people should accept and that there was never going to be a normal summer for people. At the same time, we've also heard that the government is considering easing up those travel restrictions for people who've had 2 doses of the vaccine. So if you were trying to weigh up whether or not to book a summer holiday out of the UK, it would be really difficult right now to know what to do. It seems that the government is trying to find a balance, trying to find out exactly how to sort of make a way through the current situation and live with the virus, at the same time as trying to make sure that they don't jeopardise this vaccination program and end up with the National Health Service yet again overwhelmed, because most of the scientists right now seem to agree that the UK is in the middle of a third wave of infections.
Nicole Johnston for the moment. Thank you. Well, elsewhere in Europe now, President Emmanuel Macron has voted in the first round of France's regional elections. Polls suggest his centre-right party is on course for defeat. Macron's La République En Marche is not expected to win any of mainland France's 13 regions. Meanwhile, far-right leader Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party is predicted to do well ahead of second-round voting next weekend. That comes less than a year before the two are expected to face off for the presidency itself. 5 construction workers have died after the collapse of a school building site in the Belgian city of Antwerp. 9 others were injured when part of the building fell suddenly on Friday, bringing down scaffolding. 3 workers remain in intensive care. Now, events to mark World Refugee Day are taking place globally. That comes as the UNHCR said this week that an unprecedented number of people have been forced to flee their homes. Over 82 million men, women and children have been displaced by war, violence and persecution. And in Spain, the NGO Spanish Commission for Refugees is calling on the government to do more to address the ongoing crisis on the Canary Islands. Last year, 23,000 migrants arrived there, and it's caused tensions between refugees and residents of the islands, as Rahul Patak explains.
It's often a dangerous and life-threatening journey, one made through desperation for a better life. Last year alone, nearly 850 adults and children lost their lives or went missing as they travelled in makeshift boats to the Spanish Canary Islands from Africa. The UN migration agencies have reported that the dangerous Atlantic sea route is now one of the main thoroughfares to Europe, and the pandemic has meant that numbers are only increasing.
We need to establish routes that are legal and secure. For them, it is important that we get these moving. Humanitarian visas would permit people to move countries and get international protection so they don't have to travel in small boats.
Now, the refugee crisis here in Spain, like in so many countries around the world, has often been politicised. But clearly this is an issue that's here to stay, so long as people feel the need to leave their countries either because of war, human rights abuses or economic hardship. Refugees are not just those looking to enter Europe by proximity. Isabel, who spoke on the condition of anonymity, is a human rights leader for indigenous people in Colombia. She's applied to the Spanish government for asylum to escape the brutal persecution by organised crime against those like her who dare to speak out.
One of my colleagues, Paula, filed a complaint to the police. She filed the claim in the morning, and it was picked up by the police in the afternoon. But by then, I received a call saying Paula is dead. She was found with her child in the house, who's just 10 months old. So basically, you leave or you die.
Isabel's currently waiting to see if her application for herself and her family will be successful. Organisations like the Spanish Commission to Help Refugees play a vital role, but a more urgent, coordinated international response looks to be needed now more than ever. Rahul Pathak, CGTN, Madrid.
Well, now on CGTN, 3 taikonauts, that's the official word for Chinese astronauts, are settling into China's space station, which is currently under construction. They lifted off on Thursday for their 3-month stay, the country's first manned mission in nearly 5 years. And their mission has captured the imagination of many Chinese people, with some wondering if the taikonauts have any privacy in space. CGTN's Gao Yiming brings us more.
Dining 400 meters from the blue planet, the Chinese astronauts or taikonauts can enjoy meals with a view unavailable to most. Nie Haisheng, Liu Boming and Tang Hongbo can choose from a menu with over 120 items, and the dishes have been carefully chosen.
The space foods we prepared are based on a survey from the 12 astronauts from 4 mission crews. The foods selected are what they like. There is a space kitchen in the space station, equipped with a microwave oven.
The dining area also has refrigerator, water dispenser, and folding table. Besides the improved dining experience, there is a more professional gym. Taikonauts can maintain strength and mass on the treadmill and spin bike. While ground control is constantly monitoring the Taikonauts, they're not in view 24/7.
They have their privacy in the leisure time, some certain time a day. So 1 hour before going to sleep, that's private time. They can listen to music, read books, or do whatever they want. That's their freedom. Also, every week they have 1 day off. Sunday is their day off. They can arrange the time as they like. Do whatever they like to.
Bigger quarters and advancements in technology are making life in space easier for Taikonauts. Gao Yiming, CGTN.
Now, in China, a lot has changed for women and men in recent decades, especially in terms of traditional gender roles. Many couples are, in fact, redefining roles in families. And on Father's Day, here in London, CGTN's Zheng Chungying reports now on how one full-time house husband has given up his career to raise his kids.
Guo Hao is a stay-at-home father of 2. He quit his job at an IT company in Shenzhen in 2013, allowing his wife to pursue her career goals.
It took me some time to convince myself that I could adapt to the full-time father role. At first, I thought it was a waste of talent and knowledge, but now I see being a professional father as a blessing in my life.
And as he has grown into his role as a full-time father, so too has his wife in her professional career.
I'm very grateful for my husband's support. He encourages and supports me to fulfill my career goals, but I'm also delighted to see his growth over the past 8 years. He has read hundreds of books, developed his own interests, and is satisfied with his current lifestyle as well.
A win-win situation, you might say. Yet this is quite the anomaly in Chinese society.
To this day, gender roles in many Chinese families can be very rigid, where a husband domain is outside home, working hard to support his families, and his wife stays at home, looking after domestic duties such as caring for their children.
And this had led to calls for change. A women's lobby group is pushing for mandatory paternity care, where a father would take at least a third of the mother's leave. However, while some are pushing for law enforcement, others are looking more towards empowerment. 40-year-old Chen Weihai is the founder of a welfare project, The Realm of Dads. Through a variety of events such as seminars and campings, his project aims to inspire and mobilize fathers to be better influencers of their children's lives.
There is so much criticism in today's society of the father's absent role in the growth of his children. But in fact, according to my research and observation, fathers do innately love and care for their children. They just lack structures which provide assistance, guidance, and encouragement.
Cheng said he believed the father's role in raising a child is often understated, and they bring certain qualities to the mix that even a mother cannot provide.
Their father has many more strengths in parenting than I do, but most importantly, he is better at disciplining the children.
Their pragmatic approach to a difficult situation worked, showing that a man's place can also be in the home. Zheng Chunying, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, that's just about it from the world today. Thanks very much for watching. We are, of course, available on smart TV apps like Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. You can also find us on YouTube and Daily Motion as well, of course, as at cgtn.com and on the CGTN app. From all the team here in London, goodbye. Coming up next on CGTN, it's Razor.